So if you make a zine and it ruins their reputation because the things in there can be disproven in court, you can get in trouble. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Bree and I love zines. If you're not familiar with what a zine is, it's basically like a homemade magazine. The only difference is that zines are based in expression rather than making a bunch of money. So easier way to understand this is that magazines, money, zines, little money. But that's not to say you can't make money from your zines. There are plenty of ways to do it. It's just more based on expressing yourself, sharing an artistic vision, sharing interviews, sharing something that you wouldn't find in traditional magazines that you would find at Target. Today, we are talking about zines, but I also want to go into why zine making is a crime. But no, anyway, seriously, I get a lot of questions about zine making and copyright, fair use, intellectual property, all of that. And for years, I would just respond that I didn't know the answers because I didn't. I know a little bit about fair use, but for years, I would just make zines and break the law, essentially. You guys are always asking me about it, and I was like, okay, let me sit my dumb ass down and learn something. Like, it's not a good excuse just to be like,
I don't know, that's just what I do.
Like, I don't know, it didn't feel responsible. So I decided to do some research and make this video for you guys, but I just want to put a little disclaimer out there that as a zine maker, you really don't have to worry about copyright or anything. Just to calm you down before we get started, it's really not that big of a deal because, like I said in the beginning, zines are not about making a ton of money. They're non-commercial, so it's not like you're gonna be on the radar for people that want to sue you, you know? Not to say that doesn't happen, but I'm gonna share what I've learned with you guys, and I also made a zine about it. So if you like everything that you hear in this video and then you're like, I don't want to keep watching Bree's video to refer back to these laws, then you could get the zine that I made. It's called Zine Making, It's a Crime, Zines, Copyright, and You. And basically it touches everything that we talked about in this video, or going to talk about, and it comes with some stickers because stickers are fun. Also, you guys peep my shirt. It's kind of like that play on that old anti-piracy ad. That's the whole premise of this video is making fun of laws and zines, because it seems like such an oxymoron, or like it clashes to think about zines and the law, because zines are so anti-establishment, anti-capitalistic. They're just so anti, you know? Anyway, so I thought that anti-piracy commercial was really funny. And if you haven't seen that, it's like an early 2000s commercial that tried to refrain people from downloading movies illegally. And so it would be like, the commercial goes, and then it ends with saying, so I made this shirt. It says, you wouldn't finish a zine. And then with the zine that I made about all the laws and everything, it's called Zine Making, It's a Crime. Okay, back to the video. So before we get started, I just want to give a little disclaimer that I'm no lawyer, I'm no attorney, and I am of no authority to give any legal advice, okay? I don't know if a lot of zine makers know this, but your work is automatically protected the moment that you just decide to create it. So that's a law. You can look it up, you could Google it. We'll get more into that, but I'm just letting you know, the moment that you create your zine, it's protected. It's your intellectual property. It's yours. So I'll talk about how you can kind of leave a paper trail to better protect your work, but you shouldn't really worry about copyright or anything like that because it's protected because you made it. Also, like, this video is, if anything, serving to help you break the law better. You know the rules, so now you know how to go around the rules. You know what I mean? It's kind of like zine making. Zine making, there are no rules. They're just these loose guidelines. And then once you know the guidelines, you can go above or under or around the guidelines to make your zine. That's the same thing I think about copyright, fair use, all these laws of creative and intellectual property. Once you know the laws, you can bend the rules a little bit, right? Okay, let's talk about copyright. So I don't think a lot of people know this, like I mentioned earlier, that your work is protected under copyright as soon as you publish it. This is what I wrote in my zine from the information that I found. A copyright protects an original work, aka your zine, for the rest of your life plus 70 years after your death, just by making it. So you never have to really worry about someone stealing your work, and then, you know, you'll always have a case because you made it first. But if you want a little bit of extra protection, you can put a copyright symbol on the back of your zine somewhere. So I'll put it on the screen here. This is what it looks like. So if you want that extra protection and have that paper trail just in case someone does steal your work and tries to claim it as their own, you have proof that you made it at this date and time and it is by you. So if someone ever takes you to court about that, or if you have to take someone to court, you have proof. Another way to further protect yourself is to do that, put the copyright on your zine, right? And then send a mailed copy to yourself. So put one of those in an envelope, seal it up, postage stamp it and everything, and address it to you, and send it in the mail to yourself. That way the postal office, the post office, they stamp it with the date, and you have that as evidence if you ever need to go to court, that that's when you made the zine. Because usually if someone's stealing from you, it's going to be after the fact that you already published something, right? So if you have that extra step there, it proves that you didn't just add the copyright to your zine later, actually went through the mail system, it was sent to your house, and here is a stamped, date timed envelope of it. And try not to open it, keep it closed for as long as you can until you need it. I doubt you'll ever get to that point, but just in case, that's something that you want to do to give yourself extra protection to help protect your intellectual property. Also, the copyright symbol really helps people know that they can't or shouldn't use your work without your permission. If they see a copyright symbol, it kind of signifies maybe I should talk to this person first before just using their work or using their name or whatever in my work. It's always nice to ask permission first, so I feel like the little copyright symbol is like a universal thing of people knowing like, oh, this work is protected, and if I do want to use parts of it, I need to ask permission. If you need help learning how to put a copyright on your zines, this is the way that I do it. It's very janky, so bear with me, but I just Google copyright symbol HTML and then I find it, I copy it, and then I paste it on the back of my zine or whatever. I don't actually use these, but if I wanted to, or like I'm saying, the advice I'm giving you, if you want to do that, that's just what I do to find a copyright symbol. I just Google copyright symbol HTML, I find it, copy paste, boom, you're protected. I'm a little bit familiar with the law when it comes to fair use, because if you're familiar with my work, you know that I make a lot of fanzines, and fanzines are just zines that you make of something you're a fan of. And if you're familiar with me, you know that I have a very normal, very healthy, not weird, non-obsessive interest in Nicolas Cage. Because of this very normal and not weird non-obsession interest in Nicolas Cage, I make a lot of Nicolas Cage fanzines. And a couple of years ago, I actually got 4 cease and desist letters from Nicolas Cage's legal team because of my fanzines. So a cease and desist letter is basically like this legal document that says, hey, we see that you're using my client's image in your work and you're selling it, and you should stop that before we sue you. So basically it's like a warning before things get really serious. I was gathering my defenses of, okay, I don't want to get in trouble for using Nicolas Cage's image in my zines, so I was gathering all this information to fight my case, or basically get the cease and desist letters to disappear, by claiming fair use. Fair use means that under certain conditions you can use popular celebrities, brands, and stuff like that, or someone else's work without their permission. There's general factors that allow you to use something without their permission, and I'm going to read them from my zine that I made that I was telling you about earlier. In America, at least, you can claim fair use under these general factors. So 1, how you use the material, work, or image. So in my case with the Nicolas Cage fanzines, I was using them to celebrate Nicolas Cage. So it wasn't as if I was trying to use his face to just make $1. In the zines, I was talking about how much I enjoy his movies, why I think he has a cool personality, and how much I really enjoy him as a celebrity. So if you were going to use it in a way that was just purely trying to profit, that might get you into a sticky situation. So you want to be careful of how you use this person's image, their work, or whatever in your zines. General factor number 2 is the depiction of the copyrighted work. So are you publishing this work? Are you not publishing this work? Are you making a bunch of copies of your zine, or are you just posting it on Instagram? All of that stuff kind of matters, and depending on what you want to use, you'll have to look into it and see if they allow you to use their image, their likeness, their work in your work. Okay, general factor number 3, how much of the work or image you're using. So in my case, in the Nicolas Cage fanzines, I was just using his image for the cover. So when you open up the zines, there's not really much more of him in there. There might be a few pages with pictures of him, but mainly it was just using for the cover because it is a Nicolas Cage fanzine, so I wanted people to know what the zine was about. So I didn't use a bunch of his image over and over, so I think that made it okay in the end. And then number 4, the effect it could have on the value of the original work. So depending on how you use this person's image or work or whatever in your zines, if it reflects poorly on them, they're probably going to be upset with that and not let you use their image or their work for under fair use. So in the end, with my story, the Nicolas Cage fanzines, I was gathering all this information to prove that my work was under the umbrella of fair use. So those 4 general factors that I mentioned, I was trying to gather proof that this is what I was doing, but by the time I gathered all the evidence, they actually took it back. I don't know what happened. I just got an email a few days later saying, hey, we redacted those cease and desists. You're free to use Nicolas Cage in your fanzines. So what I'm thinking, because it was Nicolas Cage's lawyer that emailed me, this is what I want to believe, okay? And if Nicolas Cage is seeing this, and if anybody could get this to him, please, I would love to meet him and see if this is true. My brain thinks that Nicolas Cage's lawyer probably showed him the work and was like, hey, do you care that this girl's using your likeness and your face in her zines? And Nicolas Cage looked at it and was like,
Nah, let her do it. Let her live. It's a zine, bro.
That's what I want to believe. That's an example of fair use. The worst that could happen if you use someone's likeness or someone's image or pieces of their work in your zine, the worst that could happen is a cease and desist. I'm gonna go off on a limb and say it's not that bad to get a cease and desist. It's just a little warning saying, hey, be careful how you use this person's image, these pieces of work or whatever in your zine. And as a defense, if you get a cease and desist, just see if it fits under the umbrella of fair use. Those 4 general factors that I shared with you guys, if you can prove a case that, hey, this is just fair use, I'm not making anything offensive, I'm not defaming anybody, this is just me depicting this person or this person's work as a good thing, and I think it's under the umbrella of fair use, you'll have a good case in your favor. I also mentioned in the zine that I got all this information from copyright.gov, so if you're in the United States, definitely check that out to get a little bit more information, or if you just want to fall asleep because it is very boring. I also mentioned that I live by a simple rule when it comes to fair use. That rule is my work transformative from the original? Say I take a magazine clipping from an old magazine, the ad, say it's like a Hoover vacuum ad. If I use that image in my zine, does it look exactly like the original, or am I collaging and cutting it up and using it in my own way that makes it completely transformative from the original? If that's the case, then I just created something new and I'm not breaking any laws. But if I look at my zine again and I see that I took something from a magazine, or if I use someone's likeness or use their image and didn't alter it enough where it looks almost like the exact same thing, then I accidentally stole something, and all that I have to do is alter it a little bit. So for example, with the magazine clippings and stuff, a lot of people ask me, hey, if I use a magazine clipping, is that illegal to like put it in my zine and then sell it? No, not really, because as long as it's transformative and you're using it to collage and stuff like that, that's under the umbrella of fair use because you transformed it into something else. But if you just take something from a magazine, like an exact page, and then glue it in your zine and that's it, you may get into some trouble for that. It's very unlikely because the nature of zines are so DIY and they're so niche and underground that you're gonna kind of fall under the radar. But just keep in mind, from my experience, do not use Disney and do not use Starbucks. Not because I generally don't support those brands, but I'm talking in a very literal stance. If you use Disney or Starbucks in your zines, or you use their likeness or whatever, they will come after you. They're very sue happy. So this is just a little extra note to be careful of that. Be careful. That's something I would steer clear of. Another thing I think we should talk about is libel. So a lot of people ask me, hey Brie, is it okay if I use people's real names in my zines? Yes, technically you can because it is your story, it's your side of the story, your truth or whatever, but I'm of the firm opinion that everybody has a right to privacy. So I personally always change the names in my zines. I try to. Sometimes I forget. Usually if I'm gonna talk about an experience that wasn't so great and it paints someone else in a bad light by no other offense than that they just did me wrong and I want to talk about that in my zine, I will change their name, because if somebody really wanted to, they could come after you for libel or defamation of character, and you don't want that, right? So I said, if you're a perzine queen like me, which if you don't know what a perzine is, it just means a personal zine. So I'm most known for my perzines. I talk about a lot of personal vulnerable stuff in my work, and that means that I talk shit about some people in my zines. But because of that, I always change the names to avoid publicly humiliating anyone. Because like I said, I believe everybody has the right to privacy, and just so you know, even if you describe them, like if you describe very specific things about them and change their name, that could still put you into some hot water if someone wanted to take you to court for defamation of character or something. So I would be very careful how you describe people too. What I usually do in my zines, if I'm talking about a bad experience, I just talk about the experience and how it made me feel. I think in order to protect yourself further from libel, you shouldn't make your opinion sound like like fact. Because technically, in the court of law, right, if someone were to take you to court for this, can you prove your opinion, you know? No. So like, for example, in my zines, I can call my ex an asshole. That's an opinion. I could say that I think my ex was gross. That's an opinion. You can't disprove my feeling. You can't disprove the fact that I think someone is gross or I think someone is an asshole. But I cannot say my ex is abusive or my ex is an addict or, you know, stuff like that, because that means something, you know? So if you say someone is blank, kind of pushing your opinion as fact, and that can be disproven in court. That could be, so if like say an ex wanted to take me to court for calling them abusive, I would have to prove abuse happened. And I keep my receipts, y'all know me.
Receipts, proof, timeline, screenshots, everything to prove that you are a bully.
Be careful what you say. If anything, just stick to hyperbole. Just be like so outrageously hyperbolic. Exaggerate your emotion so much that people understand. They can put two and two together, but you don't need to state facts or claims or something that could get you into hot water, you know? When in doubt, just change their names and remember that your opinion is legal. It's rare that you'll deal with serious repercussions from this, but just in case you care about the law, there are a couple of factors that someone would have to prove that in your zine you were being defamatory towards them. Number one is that they have to prove that you use defamatory language about them. So boom, that's easy. If you use their name and say John is a serial cheater, that's defamatory language, and that could be used against you if they can prove that that's not true. So be careful. Number two, they have to prove that you use their real name and say defamatory things about them. So like I said before, even specific details about how they look and stuff like that could get you into trouble. So I would be very careful about using real names. I really highly suggest that you just don't do that. It's not worth it. And that's just me personally. I'm not this vengeful kind of person. I get pissed off at people, yeah, and I think that they should be held accountable. Of course, I'm not a freaking doormat, but I don't think it's right to use their name in your zines and describe them to a T, because people could change. Do I think that my shitty exes are gonna change? Probably not, but they can. And if they do, and that shit is in the zines, and that's no longer true about them because they changed, I could get in trouble. And I don't think that's cool. I think everybody deserves respect. I want to believe that everybody can change. So just be careful. Be careful what you do in the heat of the moment, okay? And number three, they have to prove that your zine damaged their reputation. See, that one's tricky. So if you make a zine and it ruins their reputation because the things in there can be disproven in court, you can get in trouble. Say you're mad at some girl or whatever, and you want to ruin her reputation, and you want people to think that she's a bad person. So you make a whole zine about her and you spread it all over school, and that makes her flee school. She has to leave school. She has to change her name. She has to move states or something like that. That ruined their reputation. Your zine defamed them. It was defamatory against them. We do want to share our stories, and we do want to be able to share our truth, of course, but there are times where people can take it too far, and then you can really affect someone's life. And unless it's really deserved and you can prove that shit, don't do it. Don't do it. You have to be able to prove that it's true. And I'm not saying that stuff that happens to you isn't true, but sometimes in the court of law, it's hard to prove those things. I went to court last year recently, and I had to prove that abuse was happening to be able to get a restraining order. And even though I was telling the truth and I had all the evidence there, that shit was hard. You know, there's different rules when it comes to being in the court of law. When you're in the courtroom, that shit is very serious. They look at things very literal. The law is very literal. So you have to prove that some shit happened. And if you're just basing stuff off of gossip and hearsay and someone takes you to court, you're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna get some kind of fine or whatever, because you have to prove that that's real. Be careful if you're trying to be petty. Be careful. And that leads us to the last thing I think is very important for zine makers to know. This one's actually really cool. It's called Creative Commons. So Creative Commons means that you allow people to use parts of your work with your permission, kind of like fair use, but this one you get to pick and choose which aspects of your work or your zine that they can use. We discussed all these things about how your work is protected and how you can use other people's work in your work, but what about if someone wants to use your work in their work? That's what Creative Commons comes in. It is a licensing that you can put onto your work, and there are a couple different ways that you can allow people to share your work. I kind of think of it as like going to a buffet, right? You could get a little roll, you could get some mac and cheese, you could pick and choose, right? So that's what Creative Commons is. You can pick and choose which parts and in what ways people can use your work in their zines or their other work. So a very good example of this is my YouTube videos. So when I post my YouTube videos, they're protected under like standard YouTube licensing or whatever, but there is also an option where where you can allow people to use it under these Creative Commons clauses or licensing. And basically that means someone can take this video right now and say they want to use it in their YouTube video. I can say, sure, you can use only 5 minutes of this video in your video. That's an example of a Creative Commons restriction. Or I could say, sure, you could use the entire video, and then they have my permission to do that. Or I could say, sorry, you can't use the video, but you can use the thumbnail if you want. That's another example of Creative Commons. So in case you do want to allow people to use parts or the whole of your zine, Creative Commons allows you to choose which ways it can be used. In other words, through Creative Commons, you can decide which aspects of copyright you want for your work. Here are the 6 different Creative Commons licenses. Okay, so like I was giving you those loose examples before, but here are the 6 different ways people can use their work with your permission under certain restrictions. Okay, so the first one is attribution. They're all attributions, but this one means that someone can use the whole of your work in their work. So attribution lets people distribute or alter your zine as long as they credit the original to you. So they can use all of it, pieces of it, whatever they want. They can choose. So you give almost free creative control for them to use your zine or parts of your zine or parts of you and your likeness and your image however they want as long as they credit you. Number 2, share alike. People can use and distribute a derivative of your zine as long as the license is the same as your original. So this means that they can use bits and pieces that you allow them to use, or they can use a derivative. It resembles yours, it echoes yours, but it's not a direct copy. It's like similar but not. That's what a share alike is. Number 3, no derivatives. So no derivatives means people can distribute or display exact copies of your zine with no change or derivative of it. So that means that they can share your zine. They can't do anything. So they could just take your zine or take your work or your image and they could share it exactly like that. It's just copy and paste. No derivatives. Number 4, non-commercial. So non-commercial means that people can use your zine as long as it's not for commercial use. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Number 5 is non-commercial share alike. So basically they could do the share alike attribution, but as long as it's not for commercial use. And then number 6 is non-commercial no derivatives. So basically they can't use a derivative of your zine or your work or your image. They have to do a copy and paste as long as it's not for commercial use. Creative Commons allows you to pick and choose which conditions are part of the copyright of your zine. If you'd like more information about licensing, then check out creativecommons.org, which is where I found this information. So that one I think is pretty cool because that will help you get your work out there to more eyes and you're going to be credited. That is another umbrella of the law. Because the nature of zines is so small, batch, DIY, and non-commercial, they barely make litigation waves. So like I said before, I hope this video is helpful, but it's really just to serve as defenses in case someone tries to sue you. Now you're protected. Now you're armed with this knowledge that I gave you. As long as you're expressing yourself and the intent is just to be creative, make that zine. Don't really fear.
Can I use this old magazine clipping? I used a lot of it. It kind of looks exactly...
Don't worry. Just keep in mind the things that I taught you about altering it, making it transformative. What are your intentions? Don't make people look bad on purpose, you know, like don't use their real name. Just try to follow those general rules of life, I guess, as a zine maker, and you'll be fine. The laws, it's not that scary. I don't fear the law. At least in the sense that when I'm making my zine, I'm not trying to do illegal things. I'm just trying to express myself. I'm trying to get an idea across. I'm trying to share my story. So as long as you have good intentions, I'd say that you're pretty good to go. You're cool, all right? You're good. Don't worry about it. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. If you need information about that, I listed it all down below. And if you know anything about laws and you want to mention some stuff or you think I got some shit wrong, leave a comment, okay? Because we're all here trying to help each other out. That's what this whole video is for. I want you guys to know the laws to help protect yourself and also protect your work. Have fun making your zines. Let me know what you think in the comments and I'll see you guys next time.